Well, first of all, thank you for taking the time to talk to me and all that. Um, I guess a quick introduction. You are Dave,
I am
and
Dave.
you are Dave,
Nice
and
to be
you're.
chatting with you.
Thank you. But my pleasure, my privilege, even. So your role in the Sierra documentary is.
I am the director and producer of Legends of Adventure, working with two other executive producers, Cade Peterson and Will Perkins. We are the three-headed monster that's putting this together with a lot of other talented folks.
Fantastic. Okay, so the burning question, obviously, and I'm looking at my notes because I'm a professional. Uh, there's been a lot of articles, videos, and a few books written about the history of Sierra, including one book by Ken Williams himself. So, what can a documentary tell us that those written publications can't?
Can a documentary tell you what those written publications can? Well, I think, and we found this in our initial interview with Ken and Roberta, is that people just kind of open up a lot more in this kind of format in a different way. Um, our executive producer, Kate Peterson, sat in on that first interview, and he's probably seen most of the interviews that Ken and Roberta have done over Zoom or on YouTube or even in written form. And he said, wow, they talked about a lot of things I've never heard them talk about before. It's a bit paradoxical, but sometimes in that format, even with the camera and the lights, it can be more intimate. And it kind of, sometimes they forget the cameras and lights are there, and it becomes just a one-to-one conversation, and they share things in confidence. So I think just the documentary format will reveal a lot more. And we hope that we're going to be able to talk to a lot of people that others haven't been able to get to in the past, and just kind of make it that, that not to say that Ken's book or other, articles haven't been the fulsome look at it, but it'll be a different kind of fulsome look. And kind of with that the visual aids and things that we might be able to get to that others haven't.
Yeah. Well, so that leads nicely into the next question. What's the angle? Is this going to be a purely chronological, historical documentary, or is there a story going throughout it? And if so, from whose perspective?
It's a great question. I
Hey.
don't think, yeah, that's two in a row. I don't think we don't come in particularly with an angle other than when we originally envisioned the documentary. We just thought there needed to be that look at the adventure game genre. There'd never been the high production value doc about it. We thought it deserved it, and then we really decided that we should take a look at Sierra Online really closely and have that kind of be the lens through which we view the rise and fall and rise again of the adventure game genre. So I guess our angle is that Sierra is the angle through which we view kind of the adventure game genre. And then even within Sierra, really honing in on the story and the journey of Ken and Roberta, and using it as kind of, the personal story that kind of drives it, and will make it great for maybe for those who don't know the whole story yet, or just kind of coming into it saying, hey, yeah, I played King's Quest back in the day, but I don't really know what Sierra Online is, and I don't know who Ken and Roberta are even. I just kind of played the game and liked it. So kind of using that as that's kind of the layers of the onion that we hope are kind of going to be something broad enough that those who aren't familiar with the story really dig it, but then obviously with some of the inside scoops that even people like yourself who have read a lot of books and articles about it could really get something new from.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's interesting that it's not just the story of Sierra Online, although that's the focus. It is about adventure, the golden age of adventure games, so to speak, in general. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. I mean, initially we did want to talk about basically the entire genre and all of the different companies that made great games. And then we realized the doc would probably have to be 10 hours long. And even then we'd probably be a mile wide and an inch deep. And we always want to be the opposite, a mile deep and an inch wide, and really go deep on one thing or a number of things. So, we definitely want to talk about the companies that came after, just sort of like, hey, Sierra blazing the trail for other great companies and other great games, and also talk about, the fandom that has kind of kept the genre alive, even though Sierra is no longer, functioning and alive. So, that's a big part of the story, is sort of the modern day, renaissance of the adventure game, and some of the new age of creators who kind of took inspiration and are now taking it in their own direction. So it's, it's definitely about the genre. And also to say, if if all goes well here, and certainly the campaign is going well, and we think the doc is going to be really great, that it's not to say there won't be future Legends of Adventure, documentaries, maybe about other companies or about other creators. We really don't know, but kind of just have our sights set on this one for now.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So you've got a lot of Sierra alumni interviewed in the documentary, and I think it's fair to say that most of them enjoyed their time at Sierra, but there are some unflattering stories that can be told as well about their time at Sierra. So how do you plan on tackling those?
I mean, we basically plan on tackling those by letting people tell their story, even if it isn't all rosy or, we know this year's story ended painfully for a lot of people who were still at the company. So, absolutely, there's again kind of going back to saying that we don't really have an angle. We just want to tell the true story in a fulsome way. So, letting them tell that story and how did Sierra end for you, kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, something that's really intriguing to me about the story, and I think the question that we need to answer, because so many people love the game, so many people love the companies, is what happened? Why is the company no longer here? Because, the original kind of seed that was planted for me even before we started talking about it as a documentary, and I think it was maybe a Vice.com article, but it was something that was an article that was specifically about the end of Sierra and everything that went on with CUC. And even though I hadn't thought about it as a documentary, I thought, well, this is a pretty great story. I had no idea. So I imagine if I didn't know that part about how Sierra kind of ceased being, then a lot of other people don't. And so, yeah, we want to tell that part of the story. We want to hear from everyone involved, the people who had the rug pulled out from under them, and tell it from all angles. So yeah, it's definitely not something where we're trying to sugarcoat anything. And ultimately, we are paying tribute to the creators and the games. But that's a really interesting part of the story. So I think we'd be remiss if we just kind of didn't talk about it at all.
Yeah, yeah. The reason I ask is because there was some concern raised on Twitter, of all places, that this would be like a History Channel surface level rose tinted Ken and Roberta telling the story, and that it wouldn't go into as much detail. So I just really wanted to hear you say that you will be covering both the shits and the roses, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think just because again people love the game so much, it was a real blow to everyone on multiple levels. When not from just a financial, like, hey, we don't have jobs at this company anymore, but just the death of all these series, the King's Quest, the Space Quest, the Quest for Glory, and like that. The end of the company also meant the end of almost all those franchises. So I think if we're going to talk about why it was great and why so many people love the games, you have to talk about why the company isn't around anymore, and kind of get into that because most people don't know the story.
Yep. Yeah, I read the Vice article as well. It is really, really fascinating and kind of weird, actually. That whole financial scandal that went on with Bernie Madoff, and he certainly lived up to his last name, didn't he? That's just bonkers. So that's great. I'm going to move on here. So Roberta mentioned in your press release. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that I've read your press release, but let's just.
Of course, you may.
Okay, well, I was going to say, let's just pretend I heard this somewhere through the grapevine. In your press release, you say that Roberta mentioned she's ready to talk about some things that she hasn't talked about before. What did she mean by that?
I don't know. That only Roberta can answer that question. So that quote is after our first interview, and we do plan it to be the first of several, at least one more with Ken and Roberta. So we might just have to wait to find out what she meant by that comment. We have to leave something on the table here.
Absolutely. So what's the time frame for the documentary? What periods of Sierra's lifespan will you be covering? Is that going to be from the start of Mystery House and all the way up to the end of the company with the CUC scandal? Or are you also going to cover the brief resurrection of Sierra Games and the Odd Gentleman King's Quest and that sort of stuff? How far are you gonna go time-wise?
Certainly from the beginning, like you said, with Mystery House, and kind of even before that, the beginning of Ken and Roberta's journey and finding each other, and their journey in life. That's where we're kind of gonna begin it, and through the end of the company, and kind of the interesting thing that we're doing on the campaign. We've already cleared our first stretch goal, which is to make the feature documentary. So thank you to everybody out there who is part of it. But we created some stretch goals that basically let us tell more and more of the story. So the next one up at 150K, which at the time we're doing this interview, we've not cleared, is basically to talk about more games, to conduct more interviews. We just get to go deeper because the more production funding that we have, it's the more time we can spend on the road, the more time we can spend recruiting subjects into it. And then the super exciting one that a lot of people have said, oh, I hope we get there, is at 300K, we kind of do a spin-off mini doc series, which is going to be 6 individual docs that are totally adjunct to the main feature that can hone in on interesting stories and interesting time periods in the company, interesting games. So I hope we get there because, again, it just lets us kind of, there might be a super interesting side route that doesn't fit into the feature doc, but we get a lot of people talking about that we could make into one of these kind of extra pieces of digital content for the backers. So that it's a what time period will we cover? Obviously, we want to cover all the important stuff, but it's also something that will kind of be determined by how much we get to make it. The more time, and I can promise all the extra money that comes in at these new stretch goals, we're putting it back into the product. We want to do more interviews. We want to spend more time out there, finding the important people who maybe haven't been talked to before. So it will be somewhat answered by the budget that we get to work with, but certainly from the beginning of Sierra Online to the end.
Fantastic. Yeah, that sounds like you got a lot of work ahead of you. This is a good thing you're invested in the subject. Will you be covering this? You probably kind of already answered this question, but will you also be covering any of Sierra's acquisitions along the way, like Dynamics and Cocktail Vision, Papyrus, and those guys?
Hard to say right now. The challenge with a feature, and this was the challenge when we originally started talking about it, is how do you pack all of this into 90 minutes to 120? So it's hard to say. It's probably something that's going to come out in the edit, but obviously we want to talk about not just Sierra as the adventure game juggernaut, but as the industry juggernaut. How at one point, like Ken says in our teaser that we have out there, that they were responsible for about half a game sold, I think is a pretty crazy thing to think about in today's video game world. But it's hard to say. I mean, I can only say from my perspective as the person who will be answering the questions, that's super interesting to me. And another thing we want to hammer home for people who weren't around for the heyday to understand, like, hey, can you imagine now one company being responsible for half of all games sold and kind of, hoovering up all these other great game companies? But definitely we something we want to talk about.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories is that Sierra was moving into the FMV territory and they wanted to do Phantasmagoria. And I guess the rumor, or it's almost fact. Ken hasn't said it himself, but it's almost a given fact that they actually acquired Cocktail Vision because Cocktail Vision had a great FMV player. And so they were kind of saddled with these very weird French games that they then localized and put out, but they really just wanted Cocktail for the FMV player.
That's funny. Yeah.
All right. So last question. When is the documentary going to be done and how will it be released?
So in terms of when it will be done, it partially depends on how much we can expand the scope of it. And it's a little bit up in the air, only to say that, part of this is telling the story of the creators now. So if there's something we want to keep filming with Ken and Roberta regarding, we want to do justice to that. I can promise it won't be a project that's, 10 years in the making, anything like that. But yeah, our hope is next year. But we're careful to say that we don't know, not from a perspective of, we don't know how to get it done or we can't get it done. But if there's interesting things that we really want to capture that, are going to happen next year, or interviews we can't get until the middle of next year, I think we're open to kind of, expanding the timeline of it. But that's the tough thing about a documentary. It's a real story with real people. So there's only so much we can control. But our hope is certainly, to turn it around as fast as we can for the backers. Maybe
Excellent.
Move on to the next one.
Yep. And this, like you said, is going to be a feature documentary. So it's not like a serialized Netflix type thing. It's a feature film with the added extra stuff that you mentioned before. So how will it be released? Will it be released online? Will it be in cinemas? What happens?
So, I mean, for all the backers who have supported so far, they'll get to see it first. They're the first audience that does. As of time we're recording, we're at 1,100 backers. So, thank you for that. They get to see it first, and the people who have ordered it, on Blu-ray, at the Blu-ray Quest level and above, they're going to get to see it first as well. But then, definitely, and almost obviously, we want to get it out to everybody else too. So, you know, getting it into the festival circuit and getting it onto some sort of streaming service, that's definitely where we want to get to next. But letting the backers get that first look and getting to see it before anyone else, they'll be the initial premiere.
Yeah. Well, I suppose Netflix is already somewhat in with the game crowd. They had Ken and Roberta on one of their programs. So hopefully you'll get it on some sort of streaming service. And you mentioned Blu-ray, and I'm a sucker for additional content, audio commentaries. I'd drive my wife insane every time we watched a DVD back in the day because I always had to watch the movie again with commentary enabled. So is it going to be like bloopers, outtakes? You can't really do a making of documentary about a documentary, can you? But like audio commentary, stuff like that.
We'd like to have elements like that. Yeah, candidly, we've not decided on what the special features or commentary tracks might be, but it's something we definitely like to think about doing, packing that Blu-ray as much as we can with extra stuff. I can only say, we're going to have hours and hours of interview footage that are not going to make the cut of the main feature. So, we want to find a way for everyone else to see some of that too. And commentary tracks are my jam as well. So I'd love to get one of those on there, whether it's with us making it, who have made it, or, Ken and Roberta on what they think of the questions we ask them would be fun. But trying to bring the most value to the Blu-ray too.
Fantastic. I think my favorite audio commentary is, first of all, the Futurama audio commentaries are always spectacular.
Yeah.
And the movie Seven, one of the creepiest horror movies imaginable, has Brad Pitt and David Fincher getting drunk on the commentary interview, just shooting the shit.
That's great.
Kind of takes the brunt away from the serious movie.
Very different experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got, really.
Okay.
Is there anything you want to throw out there?
Do you want to talk about Scott Murphy? Is this going to be the same piece of content that talks about that?
Well, I was going to say, wow, you landed Scott Murphy. How did that happen? And then I realized, oh, that's a bit self-aggrandizing, isn't it? Because you're going to say, okay, Chris Pope, and you asked me, essentially. And I don't want to come off in the video going, sure. I secured Scott Murphy for the jobs. Yeah. So I wasn't going to mention, I was just going to mention it in the introductory spiel. But if you want to tell the story, go ahead.
Don't know if I'll tell the story, only because it might seem self-aggrandizing, and but just I'll take it clean. But we're super excited that we've been able to announce Scott Murphy has agreed to an interview. From the beginning, the two guys were people that fans were requesting and really wanted to hear from in the doc, and now we can say we're going to be able to interview them both. So we'd be a bit remiss not to have them. They're such an important part of, obviously, not just the Space Quest franchise, which would not exist without them, but the entire Sierra story. And we're excited to have that access. So Mark and Scott are both fully on board, and we're jazzed.
Fantastic. And you've also got people like Jim Walls and Christy Marks, and obviously Ken and Roberta, and Al, who will apparently say yes to any interview. He's been interviewed on my channel. So is that your phone going off?
I think it might be. Yeah. Did that ruin the audio take there? Or?
Nah, it's fine. It's fine. You're a busy guy.
We want to do more of this stuff, not just in campaign mode, but as there's reveals and as we get to film with more cool people, hopefully more opportunities like this to let you know on the sly, hey, we got this person that we know you're going to be excited about. So so just let us know, and we'll stay tuned about this video. And man, it's just nice to kind of work with you on this. And
the pleasure is mine. I'm super excited about this. So
beautiful. All right. Well, we'll stay tuned on Discord there, but thanks a lot. This was an interview, actually.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'll do my best not to
ask good questions. Yeah, kudos for that.
Cheers.
Yeah.
It's questions I've sort of heard like in murky territories, like on my Discord and stuff like that. Like, how is this going to be put together? Is this, when are we going to see it? All that sort of stuff. People are very interested in the documentary, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
they also want to make sure it's done right because there are some. I mean, have you ever been on one of those Sierra groups on Facebook? People are mad.
They
There
just
are
get
some.
angry about things.
Oh, they can get very defensive.
Sure.
So it's very reassuring to hear that you are covering the whole saga and not glossing over some details. So that's
Yeah.
really
Well,
reassuring.
there kind of wouldn't be a point to that for me, at least as the director. It's like, you're going to tell the story, tell the story. I don't think it's going to make anyone look like, any of our main cast look like terrible people or anything. And I think like that's also what attracts us, is everyone is open to talking about it. So
That's good. That's very good. Well,
all right.
I'll
Thank you
let you
so much.
I'll let you
Have a
go.
great day.